Hey guys, it's Sarah from Gahanna Parks and Recreation. As you know, this week's eRec theme is aquatic adventures. So we're going to be doing one of my favorite activities that is a good way to demonstrate just where all the water in the world is. We hear a lot about how most of the water is in our oceans, but I like to look at where it all is. And for me, being a visual person, I really like this activity because it's easy to just see how all of the water is divided in the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 1 gallon of water. So I have a gallon milk or water jug filled with tap water. I have added a few drops of blue food coloring. That helps a little bit to see with the demonstration, but it's not necessary. So if you're doing this at home, that is an option, but you don't need to have food coloring. The other things you're going to need are 4 smaller containers. So I am using 3 small plastic beakers that I happen to have and a little glass food dish. You can use small cups or food dishes or anything that you might have at home that allows you to divide this water into some smaller parts. The other thing you're going to need are measuring spoons. Okay, so if you have a set of measuring spoons in your kitchen, go ahead and grab that. And you're going to need a dropper. I have a dropper here that's left over from a bottle of medication. If you don't have a dropper at home, you can use a straw, or you can just do your best to guesstimate with a spoon or by pouring. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn around and show you what it is that I'm looking at here in front of me. Okay guys, so here you can see I have my gallon of blue water. I have my smaller containers, I have my measuring spoons, and my little dropper here, okay? You can also see that for this demonstration, I have labeled our containers. So we've got our ocean, those are sources of salt water. We have ice caps and glaciers. So this represents the water that we have in the world that is frozen. So it's not very accessible for us to use. We have water that comes from our lakes, rivers, and streams. So these are sources of fresh water. We have groundwater, which is just like what it sounds, water that is stored underground in our underground aquifers. And we have water vapor. So this is water that is in the air. So now that it's summer here in Gahanna, we're feeling the humidity. So we've got more water vapor in the air than we might in the winter time. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some measurements to divide out our water into these different parts. So we're going to start with our ice caps and our glaciers. So again, these are sources of frozen water. And for this, we're going to need to use our tablespoon and our teaspoon from our set of measuring spoons, okay? So we're going to measure out a total of 5 tablespoons and half of a teaspoon of water, okay? So I'm gonna carefully pour my water into my spoon here. Oh, we got a little thing floating in there, just ignore that, okay? And I'm gonna put it here in this container. So that's 1. 2, 3, 4, and we'll call that 5. And then we also need our 1/2 of a teaspoon. So it's going to be tricky to do here. I might dip it in here instead. Okay. So there's our 1/2 of a teaspoon. Okay. So you can see that represents our ice caps and our glaciers. And I apologize, it is a little tricky to pour from this big container with the phone in my hand. So next we're going to do our groundwater. So groundwater, again, this is water that is underground, okay? And for groundwater, we need a little bit less. We need 1 tablespoon and 2 teaspoons. So I'm gonna try setting you here while I measure. All right. we've got 1 tablespoon and 2 teaspoons. All right. So there you can see that represents our groundwater. Okay, and over here is our frozen water. And just one other recommendation, if you happen to have 4 containers that are all the same size, it might help to visualize a little bit just the difference between these, okay? So for our next one, we're going to need to get our dropper, okay? So I've got my little dropper here, okay? And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna measure our lakes, rivers, and streams. So I'm gonna use my dropper to get some water out of my gallon here, okay? And we're gonna count 9 drops, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? So you can see that's barely even making a little puddle in the bottom of my, my container here, okay? All right, and what's left? We've got our water vapor. Okay, so believe it or not, in this scenario, our water vapor is equivalent to only 1 drop of water. Okay, so we're just going to count 1 drop. All right, I'm going to squeeze the rest of my water back into my gallon. Now, if you want to, you can measure out your oceans. That equates to about 15.5 cups of liquid plus 1 tablespoon. Okay, but really that's not necessary because as you can see, we already have it in a container. So we're gonna look and just see, okay, our water vapor is just our 1 little drop, okay? The next largest is gonna be our lakes, rivers, and streams. That was equivalent to 9 drops. Our groundwater comes next. That was our 1 tablespoon plus 2 teaspoons, okay, so not too much there. And then we have our frozen water, our ice caps, and our glaciers. And then you can see by comparison just how much of our gallon we have left. So representing our oceans is what's remaining in our gallon container, okay? So you can see very easily here that our oceans make up the largest source of water on the world. About 97% of our water is in the oceans where it is saline, it's full of salt, and is not very easily used. Okay, so really when we talk about water that we have available for human use, our lakes, rivers, and streams, this fresh water is going to be the most easily accessed. And then we do use our groundwater sometimes. Maybe you have a well at home that you get your water from, but that is also a useful source of water. But in the big scheme of things, very little of this water is truly available for us to use. Okay, so thanks for joining me today. We will post the measurements for this activity, so if you want to replicate it at home, you can do so, and feel free to post in the comments. Thanks, guys.